Hi guys, I'm Tracy. Thank you for joining me today. So today's video is kind of a continuation of my last video. I did one about the Beautylish brushes that I have that I highly recommend, and it seemed to be helpful to a lot of you guys. So I wanted to mention a few more that I wasn't able to fit into that video. Three of them are Chikuhodo brushes and one Wayne Goss brush that I wanted to point out. And as of yesterday, these are all in stock, but I'll mention as I go. A couple of them, they go in and out of stock pretty frequently, so they might not be available for you when you're ready to buy them. So the first one I'm gonna start off with is the Chikuhodo Z10, and I believe I demoed this at some point, but this is the softest liner brush that I've ever used, and I think I can't imagine a pencil brush getting any better. It's a fairly big pencil brush, if I can compare it to like some of the Chikuhodo ones I have, but because it's squirrel hair, it picks up product very well. So even if you had like a shadow that was kind of hard to pick up, this should pick it up. And it just creates such a seamless application. I have makeup on already. I just want to kind of show you guys how I use this. So that's pretty much all I use it for, is my eyeshadow underneath, and sometimes to put like a little here if I want to like bring my eyeshadow up. This is a really good brush for that. And it's a gray squirrel hair, and you can also get this on Visage USA, who's also having a 20% off special right now. So that's the Z10. And then another one that I've been over, the past few months, I've been getting questions, is the Chikuhodo Z10. So it's called a powder brush, and this is dyed goat hair. If you follow the rules, you're not supposed to use dyed goat hair for liquid or creams. It's supposed to be just for powder, but I use this pretty much only for my liquid foundation. So it's what I use today, and it does have a tendency to streak. So, and I've heard a lot of people saying that they couldn't get this to work for their liquid foundation, but it hasn't been too much of a problem for me. Sometimes I'll find some streaks and I'll just kind of like buff it. So I have a previous video, I'll link it down below, of me actually demoing this with my foundation, but I really do like a buffing motion like this, and it does, I really like the way it leaves my foundation looking. I can't explain it. It tends to look a little bit more airbrush than if I were to use another brush or a sponge. And I don't think it works like this. I pretty much always buff my foundation in with this. One downside is it's a little difficult to wash, because if you're going to use it for liquids, you're going to have to wash it fairly often, and it is so dense, and it's kind of hard. Like, you see how there's like foundation right here? I think because when I washed it last time, maybe somewhat kind of like seeped out as it was drying. But if you look how dense it is, you have to really, when you clean it, you kind of have to like really get in the bristles to get all the product out. So that's one thing you might want to consider if you're not someone that washes your brushes pretty frequently. You just might not want to deal with washing this, every 3 or 4 days. I don't wash it every time I use it, but probably every 3 or 4 uses I do wash this. And because it is such a dense brush, it does take a while to dry. So that's one thing that I'm kind of trying not to use this too often. It's just a little bit of a pain to wash, and I just don't want to lose any bristles with this brush. So I just wanted to put it out there, but it is really great for liquid, and I can imagine cream foundations, but I haven't used it for powders, but that is what this is meant for. And I think if you do wear powder or mineral foundation, it would do a really good job buffing it in. I just don't use those products, so I can't say for myself. So that's the GSN2. And then another favorite Chikuhodo brush that I have, and I'll insert a clip of me using this. And if this is clean, I'll pretty much choose this one above any of my other concealer brushes. But this is the Takumi series T6, and it's considered a large eyeshadow brush. For me, and I think for a lot of people, it would be a little too big for eyeshadow. So I use it for under eye concealer and concealing right here, and it works great for that. If you haven't tried a Takumi series, something that is not my favorite is it's very lightweight, and it's not made of wood. It's this nice plastic, but it's very lightweight, and it's a very short brush. So I do have sometimes, this is sometimes a hard brush to store, because I store my brushes in these things, and it's just one of those short brushes that kind of get in the way. So, you know, just putting it out there, but I think this brush is definitely worth it. It's just not as luxurious as like the GSN series that I have here. Okay, so that's the T6. Oh, and another thing I use it for is, like, if I do an eyeshadow look and I'm like, oh my god, it's too much or too bright, I'll use this to kind of like really tone it down, and it works really great for that. So if you're someone that tends to do that, this might be a really good one to use. And you know, it usually has some concealer, so if you want to like erase your eyeshadow, this can do it for you. And then really quick, another brush that I want to mention, not that I think it's a must-have brush, but mainly it's always available. At least the last I checked, it was available, and for the price you're getting a really high quality brush, and that's the Goss Airbrush. So I know a lot of people have this. In case you don't, I wanted to give you guys a more detailed look at this brush, and I know there are a lot of people, you know, giving their opinions on this brush. The only thing I've been able to use it for myself is like powdering, mainly under the eyes. And because it's not a very dense brush or a very fluffy brush, it doesn't hold on to a ton of product. So, you know, it's for a very light application, which for under the eyes for me is a good thing. So I'll show you guys really quick with my setting powder. So I try not to put too much. I'll put like that much. So if you don't want a really heavy powder, you know, a really heavy application of powder, this is a really good brush. The only thing that prevents me from highly recommending this or getting another one is that there's another brush that I prefer much better, and it's the same price. It's just been out of stock for a while, and that is the Goss number 2. So if this is in stock and you're trying to decide between the two, I would go for the 2, because it's just, this is more versatile, it's fluffier, it can do the same thing that the Airbrush does, but it can also do like blush, highlight, contour. If you want a really light contour, this is, I think, better for that. Unless you're someone that likes a fine, you know, narrow brush for contour and blush. I don't, so I just don't have as much use for this brush, and I always grab for this one over this one. If this one is dirty, then I grab for the Designer Pro. Actually, these two are pretty much, the 2 and the Designer Pro are on par for powdering. I think these are equally as good. And if you want to get an idea of what the Airbrush is like, the only brush that I have that's somewhat comparable is the Sanuji Designer Pro. So the shape and the length is pretty much the same, but the Designer Pro is just much more substantial. There's a lot more hairs. This is also dyed goat hair, so it's not quite as silky as the Airbrush, but I use these for the same thing, for powdering. And if I had to choose between these two, I would reach for the Sanyo G, just because it's just more substantial. It's a little bit quicker, you know, and I don't know, I just do prefer this one over this one. But this is, for the price, an amazing brush. Hopefully the price doesn't go up anytime soon, but the last I checked, the price was still the same. It's $35, and this is the very first natural hair brush that I bought, as far as like a handmade fude brush. And so I've had this for a long time. I've washed it many times, and it's in such great shape. So the quality is superb. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, I would think by now it would start to like shed or look worn out, but it looks really great, I think. So if you want something for under the eye, or if you want like a backup for another brush that you have, this is good for that. I just have two other brushes that I prefer over this one, but this one is always available as far as I've seen, so I wanted to mention this one. And that's pretty much all I have. So if there's any other brushes that I didn't mention, it's not that they're not great, it's just that it would just take forever for me to talk about them in detail like this. But if you guys are looking to take advantage of the Beautylish gift card event, I think that, you know, of the brushes that I mentioned, all of those for me have been outstanding and have, you know, had the performance and the quality that you would want from a high-end Japanese made brush. So that's really all I have for today. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you all next time. All right, bye.